You expect the foundational rules of everyday life to be constant, like physics. You drop a rock, it falls.
Right.
You measure out a cup of flour for a recipe, you get exactly a cup of flour. You just implicitly trust the unit of measurement.
Yeah, a centimeter doesn't suddenly become a millimeter overnight.
Hmm.
And that reliability is comforting. I mean, it is the very framework we use to navigate both the physical and the financial world.
But look at your life right now. You look at a grocery receipt today,
Yeah.
or, you try to sign a lease for an apartment, and those basic laws of financial physics feel entirely broken.
Oh, absolutely, bros.
Like you drop the rock and it floats. You measure out that cup of flour, and the recipe suddenly demands twice as much to get the exact same result.
Yeah, it is the macroeconomic equivalent of gravity failing. We're trying to navigate a reality where the numbers we've always relied upon just do not mean what they used to.
And you are living this daily reality. I mean, you are watching grocery prices absolutely skyrocket week over week. Capital city rents have become a complete joke, completely detaching from local wage growth.
They really have.
If you are young or on a low income, homeownership feels entirely out of reach. For retirees living on fixed incomes, it's a struggle just to absorb the cost of utilities.
Right. And plus, there is this massive paradox staring us in the face. Despite rising interest rates, which, are traditionally supposed to cool an overheating economy down, prices across the board just keep climbing anyway.
Yeah, it makes no sense on the surface.
Exactly. That paradox tells us we aren't dealing with a temporary glitch in the supply chain or just random bad luck. We are dealing with a fundamental structural shift in the underlying machinery of the economy itself.
The standard levers aren't working because the foundation they're attached to has fundamentally changed.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are going on a mission to impartially decode the exact economic cause and effect relationship between government spending since 2020 and why the physical cash sitting in your wallet right now buys significantly less today than it did just a few years ago.
It's such a crucial topic.
It is. We are going to cut through all the media noise and entirely ignore the partisan political blame game for this deep dive. We're just looking at the math based on today's source material from financial analysts.
And to really understand the pain you are feeling at the checkout counter right now, we have to trace the timeline back to a very specific, critical divergence point. We have to rewind to the year 2020.
The lockdowns. And, regardless of anyone's personal opinion on the effectiveness or the public health politics of those lockdowns, from a purely financial perspective, they presented the government with a uniquely terrifying problem.
Terrifying is the right word.
Right. The global and domestic economy essentially came to a complete grinding halt.
People were legally required to stay inside. Vast swaths of the workforce simply couldn't go to work. However, their financial liabilities did not get the memo.
They definitely didn't.
Rent, mortgages, electricity, groceries, insurance, all of those obligations kept marching on and compounding, even though the primary source of income for millions of households had instantaneously evaporated.
You cannot simply halt an entire economy without devastating consequences. The velocity of money just dropped to zero.
Yeah.
Very few normal people, or even small businesses for that matter, had the liquid savings to survive a multi-year deep freeze with zero revenue.
Right, and the government recognized an urgent need to step in to prevent mass bankruptcies and widespread destitution. So they implemented a drastic solution. They turned on the money printer.
And when we say money printer, we're not joking around.
No, not at all. When we talk about the money printer in this context, we aren't talking about a small, targeted stimulus package designed to give a slight bump to a sluggish quarter. The sheer scale of the liquidity injected is hard to fully conceptualize.
It's mind-boggling.
In just 12 months, Australia's money supply almost doubled.
Wait, a doubling of the entire money supply in a single calendar year is a staggering metric.
It's massive.
They created a massive influx of new fiat currency to support people who had lost their jobs, to keep commercial enterprises from going under, and to fund community organizations. It was an unprecedented, indiscriminate distribution of newly created capital just to keep the lights on.
Exactly. While the productive capacity of the nation was essentially placed in a medically induced coma, they flooded the zone with capital. But injecting synthetic liquidity into a frozen system comes with immense secondary effects.
Wait, I have to push back on the sheer scale of that strategy based on the sources. If you completely halt an economy, you can't just replace missing organic wages with newly printed synthetic money and expect zero long-term consequences.
You really can't.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg while simultaneously ignoring the severe side effects of the massive dose of pain medication you just administered.
That's a great way to put it.
You aren't actually resetting the bone. You're just masking the immediate agony. Eventually, that heavy medication is going to absolutely wreck your liver.
Right. The acute crisis was treated at the expense of chronic systemic health. The government optimized for the immediate, terrifying reality of a lockdown population, but in doing so, they introduced a massive overhang of liquidity into an economy that was no longer producing anything of value.
And critically, that strategy didn't even taper off when the lockdowns ended.
No, the intervention actually became more aggressive. Post-lockdown, there was a profound institutional fear. Officials had spent so long conditioning the public that it was unsafe to interact in the physical world, they genuinely feared that when restrictions were lifted, people would remain isolated.
The assumption was the economy would stay frozen out of pure psychological habit.
Yes. To counter that, they printed even more money specifically to incentivize consumption. They started engineering direct fiscal policies to force velocity back into the system. They were essentially bribing the population to re-enter the commercial sphere.
Take Victoria as a prime example. The government implemented a scheme where Victorians could claim back up to $200 on a restaurant bill.
Oh, yeah, the dining rebates.
Right. They were actively utilizing newly printed currency to subsidize a parma and a pint. They were incentivizing demand in a hospitality sector that was still severely constrained on the supply side, dealing with staff shortages and broken logistics.
And the crucial question we have to ask about those rebates and stimulus checks is, well, where did that capital originate? It did not come from a magical vault of pre-existing taxed sovereign savings.
Well,
It was willed into existence. That massive, unbacked influx of new money into the retail economy is the direct mechanical catalyst for the cost of living crisis you are navigating today.
so we've established that the money supply almost doubled, but that creates a massive cognitive dissonance for the everyday consumer.
How so?
Well, the physical $50 note in your wallet looks identical to the one you had in 2019. It has the exact same polymer feel, the exact same picture on it. The shift in its actual purchasing power is entirely invisible to the naked eye.
Ah, right. What's fascinating here is that invisible shift is the mechanical reality of currency debasement. When a central bank drastically expands the monetary base without a corresponding proportional increase in actual economic output, the existing currency in circulation inherently loses its underlying value.
It is the macroeconomic equivalent of adding water to a pot of soup.
I love this analogy from the sources.
Yeah, imagine you are making a rich, hearty soup, and suddenly you invite twice as many people over for dinner.
Yeah.
You don't have any extra chicken, you are completely out of vegetables, and you don't have any more noodles.
So what do you do?
To ensure everyone gets a bowl, you simply pour a massive amount of water into the pot to double the physical volume.
Right, the physical volume of the liquid doubles, but you have not created a single calorie of new nutritional value. You've merely diluted what was already present. You've stretched the identical nutritional density across a massive, watered-down medium.
And this is the crucial disconnect that is so frequently misunderstood in the mainstream conversation about cost of living. During the 2020 lockdowns, we didn't just fail to add new ingredients to the economic soup, we actually halted existing production.
You weren't baking more bread, we weren't building more houses, we weren't expanding factories.
Exactly. Global shipping ground to a halt, microchip production stalled,
Yeah.
and local manufacturing was paused. The economy was actually losing ingredients from the pot while simultaneously being flooded with unprecedented gallons of synthetic water.
It was a dual shock. A massive negative supply shock colliding head-on with a massive positive liquidity shock.
Which perfectly explains the delayed invisible tax on your purchasing power.
Yeah, while everyone was stuck inside during the strictest phases of lockdown, that extra money didn't have much to do. The velocity of money was low. People were saving their stimulus because there was nowhere to spend it.
But once the world reopened and the psychological fear subsided, boom, exactly. People returned to their lives, started traveling, started renovating, and started competing for resources again. Suddenly, all that extra watered-down currency that had been dormant was unleashed onto the open market.
Flooding the retail system and directly fueling the higher prices you see for groceries, fuel, and basic essentials.
That brings us perfectly to the physical checkout counter at Kohl's or Woolworths. If my dollar is watered down at a macroeconomic level, How does that actually force the local supermarket manager to change the physical price tag on a carton of eggs or a loaf of bread?
To understand the transmission mechanism between central bank liquidity and retail price tags, you have to look at the mechanics of inflation through the lens of a localized auction.
Let's visualize that. Imagine an auction house, and there is only a single loaf of bread available on the podium. Because the monetary base was just doubled, every single bidder in that room suddenly realizes they have twice as much cash in their pockets as they did yesterday.
A rational bidding war instantly materializes. The seller at the front of the room recognizes the massive surge in localized demand, and critically, they recognize that the buyers have the newly printed liquidity to back up their bids.
So the seller raises the floor price.
Naturally, it isn't necessarily a malicious act of corporate price gouging in a vacuum. It is a rational, mechanical market response to a system absolutely flush with extra cash bidding for the exact same amount of scarce resources.
More dollars chasing the same amount of bread, the same amount of timber, or the same amount of real estate.
Right, and that realization requires a fundamental mindset shift in how we view the valuation of our assets and our daily necessities.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have this collective tendency to look at the housing market or the grocery aisle and believe the intrinsic value of those items has skyrocketed.
We really do.
We look at a house that sold for $500,000 10 years ago, selling for $1 million today, and we think the house itself has somehow become twice as valuable. But the bricks and the wood are identical. They might even be degrading.
Yeah, the loaf of bread didn't suddenly become a highly advanced luxury commodity. It is still just flour, yeast, and water.
Think about it like a tape measure. Imagine the government quietly took your tape measure, and they secretly shrank the physical space between the inches.
Okay, I'm following.
You take that compromised tape measure in your backyard to measure a piece of wood. Yesterday, with the old tape, it was 10 inches long. Today, you measure it with the new tape, and it reads 20 inches long. You might intuitively celebrate and think, wow, my piece of wood doubled in size.
But the physical dimensions of the wood did not alter by a single millimeter.
No, the piece of wood didn't grow. The unit of measurement simply got weaker. The tape measure is lying to you. In our economy, the Australian dollar is that tape measure. It's the unit of account we use to measure the value of a house or a car or a week's worth of groceries.
And the unit of account was structurally compromised because the supply of it was vastly expanded. The house didn't get bigger, the bread didn't become more nutritious, the measuring stick just shrank.
It's not that your house is worth more dollars, it's that your dollar fundamentally buys less house.
Spot on.
If the underlying mathematics of debasement and inflation are this logically straightforward, if we're simply dealing with a system flooded with excess liquidity chasing constrained goods, the obvious next question is about the cure. Why isn't the government actively fixing the tape measure?
Well, the macroeconomic cure for an overinflated monetary base is entirely understood. It is a